Good afternoon, everybody. Nathan Deno here with Passageways Education, and today we are going to be walking through the Expense Reports module in this Expense Reports Basics session. The Expense Reports module is a really handy module that you can plug right into your employee portal and allows your employees and staff the ability to submit expense reports through the portal in a digital format, and there's an approval system that is also built behind that, as well as a pay system. And today we're going to actually be walking through the three different kinds of islands that are associated with the Expense Reports module. The My Expense Reports island, the Approve Expense Reports island, and the Pay Expense Reports island. So this session is really going to walk you through each one of those components, showing you how each island really functions. So we'll just go ahead and jump right in here. Once the Expense Reports module is set up and running, your staff can go to the My Expense Reports island, and that's the island that we see right here. This Expense Reports island is where any user goes in and can submit their expense reports. They can see those expense reports, and then they'll also get any expense reports that might be declined. They would be able to see those as well. And currently, as this island stands now, there are no expense reports submitted at the moment. So it looks just like a blank expense reports island for when you first roll out this product. Now, the My Expense Reports island, there's something obviously that's very important about it, and that's the fact that it says My at the beginning of the description of the island. Anytime that you have a My island, that is only going to display information that pertains to you. So even if this My Expense Reports island is on a public page where multiple people can access it, whenever a user goes and looks at this island, they're only going to see the information that pertains to them. So I will only see expense reports that I have submitted through this island. Now, whenever we want to go ahead and submit an expense report through the My Expense Reports island, the way we do that is by going to the Actions button of the Actions section here of the island. And when we click the Actions button, it's going to take us to the three options that we have available: Create New Expense Report, View and Delete My Frequently Used GLs, and change this island's title on the page. Obviously, change this island's title is a default one that's on every single island in the portal. But what we are concerned about is this Create New Expense Report. So as soon as we click that Create New Expense Report, the first thing it's going to do is ask us, what is the purpose of the report, or what is the name of this report? Now, your organization probably will have a naming convention set up that is used for consistency, so that way the report is easily recognized. So I could say, Nathan Deno, December Amex report, as just an example. There's also an account number, and this is an optional field that your organization may have available. This is if you want to enter in your, say, your checking or savings account number to have anything that's due to you be directly deposited. And I'm just going to enter in some generic information here for that. And then our next step is to enter in the date range for the expense report. Now, typically, most organizations will do this on a month-to-month basis. Whether it's true calendar month, let's say we can just do December, for example, the entire month of December, or whether or not it maybe falls on the 15th and the 14th of the month or something like that. But once we have those pieces of information in, we're going to go ahead and click Next. And that's going to take us right into where we can begin to submit our expense report items. And this is the interface through which we do that. You'll notice across the top here, across this little toolbar, we have several different types of options. And these are different item types. Now, we're going to go through each one of these and explain how they function. And each organization has the option of turning these off or leaving them on based on however your organization handles these particular type of expense items. Now, the very first one listed here is what we call a regular item. And a regular item is any purchase that you purchased basically directly out of pocket. So I paid my own cash dollars or used my own credit card or debit card to pay for it, and it's not anything that has been supplied by the company. So as soon as we click that button, it takes us to this entry where we can enter in the details of this particular regular item. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to choose the date that we made the purchase or did the expense on. And then we're going to say who is it paid to. So let's say in this case I took clients out to lunch, but I paid with my own card and I will need reimbursement for that. So let's say that we went to Nathan's favorite restaurant. If I can type here. We then enter the dollar amount. Let's say it cost me $60 when it was all said and done. And then we also have a couple other options here, and these are also customizable with the expense reports module. But we can choose a GL if we want, that's a required item, and then we can also assign a cost area for that. So if your organization utilizes cost areas, you can also choose that as a field to enter. Now the next area is the receipt area. There are three options. Number one, I don't have a receipt. Number two, I have a receipt, but I'm going to send it physically, so I'm going to maybe put it in an envelope and mail it or what have you. And then the last option is I have a receipt and I want to upload it. So let's say I took a picture of my receipt with my smartphone and I'm going to upload that image here, or I scanned it into a PDF with our local scanner at the office. Now, the expense reports module also has the ability to have a required receipt when you exceed a certain dollar amount. And I believe that this portal is currently configured to like a $25 limit. So anything over $25 requires a receipt, whether it's physically or uploaded. And in this case, for today's example, I'm just going to go ahead and choose sending it physically in order to move forward. But I did want to show you that if you simply click on the third option to upload a receipt, you'll see that you'll get this choose file where you can browse out and grab whether it's a picture or that PDF of the receipt to attach to this expense reports item. I'm going to instead just choose that I'm going to send it physically, and then I'm going to enter a description, so a justification for the expense. Took clients out to dinner. Obviously, I'd probably put more details than that if I was actually submitting a real expense report, but you get the point here. Once we have everything complete, we then are ready to click OK. And then that's going to save our very first entry for our expense report right here and list it out for us, showing us several of the details of that particular expense item. Now, one thing I do want to draw your attention to over here to the right-hand side is that currently, or as you go through and continue to add these expenses, the expense reports module is going to begin to total up those items for you. Going to give you a total expenses, total prepaid, total corp card, and total amount to be paid to you, the employee. And as we will see and begin to add these different items in, we'll see how those particular items affect these dollar amounts on the right-hand side. If at any point I want to go ahead and just save this as a draft, let's say that I create my expense report at the beginning of the month, and I just, as the month progresses, I just continuously add expense reports items into it. I can do it that way and just save it as I go from one expense to the next. And then also, we'll see here in just a moment, we have a send option. And that send option is usually going to be configured to go directly to our supervisor, whoever our supervisor is set up in the portal. And we're going to go ahead and show you that second step as well on how to approve expense reports. But let's go ahead and go through these additional item types. The next item type is pretty straightforward. This is a mileage item. Anytime that I need to maybe use my personal vehicle to drive, I enter the number of miles here, and then I choose a appropriate GL as well, and perhaps a cost area. And then I can also associate a receipt with this as well. So if I have something that indicates my mileage, whether it's a picture of my odometer or what have you. Again, I can enter in a description here. Drove to client site as an example. And then as soon as I click OK, it's going to go ahead and add that mileage item, and then it's automatically going to calculate the amount of mileage due. So the system allows us to enter in the rate in the properties when the module is first set up, and then every employee who then submits a mileage item, it will automatically do that calculation for us. Now our next item is a prepaid item, and that item type is sometimes a little bit confusing, but basically it's used in a scenario where someone else, for example, like the organization, has paid for an item, but it needs to be listed under your expense report. So let's say that, for example, the accounts payable department went ahead and paid for your hotel expense at a conference that you're going to. Now, you didn't pay for it directly with a corporate card, but it still needs to be listed as part of expenses related to you. So what we would do here is say paid to ABC Hotel. We would enter the dollar amount for the night stay, and then we would really just treat this just like any other expense that we would fill out. But it'll be interesting for you to see when we click OK here that how it affects the bottom line. And I'll just enter a little justification there, and then click OK. So prepaid items are not going to be due to you. They're not going to be cash due to you, but they are going to be part of your total expense. And we can see that over here on the breakdown now. We have a total expense of $213, and $125 of that is prepaid from this particular hotel stay that our accounts payable department paid for us directly. And that we didn't have to worry about paying for it. Our supervisor didn't necessarily have to pay for it directly out of their corporate card, but it is going to be listed on my expense report. The next item is pretty straightforward, and this is where most items will be listed, and that is a corp card item. So a corp card item is when you use your corporate card to pay for an expense. So if you have an American Express card or a Visa card that your organization provides to you for company expenses, this is how you would enter it. And the corp card number is the first thing that you can enter. Sometimes organizations only require the last 4 digits of the corp card, or last 5 digits or whatever if it's a American Express. But we still follow the same steps though that we did for everything else to enter in what the expense was for. And I'm going to say that this is a conference registration. And then enter the dollar amount. Say it was $4.99, and then it was for training. We're enter in a cost area here, and then I can mark that I'm sending my receipt physically, and then conference expense, something like that. So as soon as we click OK, again, this is going to be another item type that is not due to be paid to you as the employee. And we can see here as well that that corp card expense is listed, and our total expense for our total expense report is now at $712. The last item that I want to touch on, or last item type I should say, is an item type called cash advance. And cash advance can also be one that's sometimes a little confusing, and every organization handles it a little differently. But cash advance is a scenario where, let's say that I'm going to that conference, and my organization gives me $100 to pay for miscellaneous items, for example, cabs or meals or what have you, and they give me physical cash. Now, that physical cash is obviously due back to the organization if there's anything left over from it. So the way a lot of organizations handle this is to, first of all, you enter in the cash advance, and you can say that this is paid to Nathan Deno, cash advance. We enter in the dollar amount. Say it was let's say it wasn't much. Let's say it was just $50. We still choose a GL and a cost area and enter in the description. So cash for conference expenses. We click OK, and you'll see here that it lists it as a cash advance, and then we have the $50 amount here. But what you'll notice is that the amount to be paid to me just dropped by $50. Okay, so the way that most organizations handle this is that you'll enter in the cash advance, and then you'll enter in manually each one of the expense items that you use that cash advance for. So if I was then to enter in a regular item, say, paid to cab company, $30 for a cab to the back and forth from the hotel. So I enter in that information and click OK here, and that $30 regular expense is then going to be taken out of that cash advance. So eventually, hopefully that should zero out. So if there was $20 left over, what many other organizations do as well will say add regular item, cash returned to organization. So the $20 remaining cash from that expense, I enter it in as a return to the organization, and then that way it balances out. So we end up right back with where we're at. We're supposed to be, $20 cash returned, and then that way that $50 zeroes out, and I'm still owed the $88 from my $60 expense for the clients, and then that $28 in mileage. So once I have my expense report all entered in, I'm then ready to send it off to be approved. And when I hit this send button, it's then going to say, okay, your expense report has been submitted to Bruce Banner. And in this case, Bruce Banner is my supervisor. Now, as soon as I do that, the My Expense Reports island shows my expense report for December right here, and it shows my status. In addition, the approver is going to receive an email alert letting them know that you have an expense report that needs to be approved. At that time, the approver, who in this case is Bruce Banner, who I'm also logged in here for simplicity, he goes to the Approve Expense Reports island. And this Approve Expense Reports island shows me all of the expense reports that I need to approve. And we can see here that this Nathan Deno one that we just submitted is listed and available for me to approve. Now, the way that I would approve that as a approver is to hover over the ID number for that expense report. And you can see that a little drop down appears right here. When I click that drop down, I'm going to get several different options. The very first one being view details, I can also print this. I can just automatically approve it. I can also forward it to someone else for approval, and I can decline it. But in this case, what I want to do is I want to view the details, first of all, because I want to make sure that the person who submitted this expense report did everything correctly, and just to make sure there aren't any issues with that submission. So as soon as I click view details, it's going to take me into this detail view, where I can see all of the expense report items, each and every one. I can even edit these if needed, so if they happen to enter in the wrong GL, for example, I can just go ahead and edit that. Now, all of that action will be recorded in what we see as the audit trail right here. Now, you can see Bruce Banner did several different items here, created several different expense reports items, and we can see the date and the time that he performed each one of those actions. Assuming everything looks good, I just go ahead and click OK here, and then I hover over and then can click Approve. When I click Approve, I enter in any comments. Looks good, clear for payment, and then I click OK. So as soon as I click OK, as an approver, a alert goes to the person who submitted the expense report, giving them a heads up that the expense report has been approved. And now that expense report then moves to the Pay Expense Reports island. And that Pay Expense Reports island is a island that only typically like accounts payable or accounting people have access to record and mark the expense reports as paid. So usually very restricted people have access to that Pay Expense Reports island here. But when we go to that Pay Expense Reports island, we see all of the expense reports that are waiting to be paid. Now, the expense reports island itself does not actually pay the employee. It does not interface with your payment systems at all. It is simply a archival purpose that allows you to mark these as paid and track them through the portal. So there isn't anything tied to like ADP or any other payment systems like that. But as a accounting person, as a Pay Expense Reports individual, I can see all of the expense reports that need to be paid. And any one of these, I can, again, hover over the ID, click the drop down, and then I get View, Print, Pay, or Decline. So if I was to decline this at this point, this would go back to the actual submitter of the expense report. So if I happen to catch something that was incorrect, I can decline it. I can also enter in a comment for it as well as to why it was declined. If I instead choose to go ahead and pay it, I can just mark that here. But one thing I did want to bring to your attention as well, because usually they're going to be doing this in bulk, is that you have an export option here that allows you to export any types of reports that are in the Pay Expense Reports area, whether it be unpaid reports, paid reports, or both. You choose a date range for that, and it's going to give that all to you in a nice CSV file that you can, open up in Excel and then filter columns, do whatever you would like with that data once it's available to you. But when I go ahead and go into an expense report and click the drop down here and then click Pay, I get to enter in comments here as well. See paid via ADP, let's say, on for December. Now, obviously, the person who's doing this is going to be recorded in the system as well, so they don't need to enter their name or anything like that. But if you have some type of naming convention or something that's required for your organization in the comments here, definitely make sure that you follow those protocols as well. So once you enter your comments and click OK, at that point, the expense report is then marked as paid, and the submitter of the expense report also receives an alert, letting them know that that expense report has been marked as paid. So they know then that in maybe their next check or what have you, they're going to be receiving the cash that's due to them. So that sums up the functionality of the expense reports module. Now, one thing I do want to bring to your attention is down here under your My Settings, everybody has My Settings in their navigation tree. There is the My Preferences. And My Preferences is where you can set alert preferences for all of the modules, including the Expense Reports module. And we can see right here that Expense Reports has 3 separate alert options. You want to make sure that those alert preferences are set. Typically, most people like it by email, but you may require it to be pop-up as well in your organization, depending on how your organization handles that. But make sure that these are selected so that way people do get the necessary notifications about their expense reports from the submitter side as well as the approver side, and also, I guess, the pay side. So the expense reports module, just like every one of our other products, has material available to you to access at help.passageways.com at our help center. So feel free to search for that. We also offer weekly complimentary trainings on a variety of different products. We do also have expense reports module in that list periodically. So if you have team members at your organization who want to jump into that training, definitely search for weekly. And weekly here is going to pull up the complimentary weekly training schedule. So go out there, register for any trainings that you like. You can also search for expense reports in here as well, and get access to anything related to expense reports, including release information that we can see right here. So thanks a lot, everybody. I hope you guys found this expense reports module training beneficial. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us here at Passageways, either at support@passageways.com or by your customer success manager. We're always here and happy to help. Thanks a lot, everybody, and take care.